They have glowing yellow eyes, run on four unnaturally long legs, and can manipulate time and space. It's no wonder skinwalkers are said to be such fearsome creatures. Their legend is so entwined with ancient Navajo lore that it has become a taboo subject within the tribe, let alone with outsiders. To respect the Navajo culture, we'll be talking strictly about the history of skinwalkers and the stories of interlopers who claim to have come across them. To the Navajo tribe, the legend is very real and very dangerous. Behind the legend of skinwalkers, the Native American shapeshifters that haunt the Southwest. It's the chilling Native American legend that has inspired books, movies, and TV shows. Have you heard of the skinwalkers? Even their name is enough to send shivers down your spine. So what's the story behind this monstrous myth? To those of us on the outside, these creatures are nothing more than a spooky story. But to the Navajo tribe, the history of skinwalkers is rooted in the ancient world. Over time, people started to group skinwalkers and werewolves together. How come? Well, as shapeshifters, skinwalkers transform into various animals, one of these being a wolf. It isn't a totally accurate comparison by all accounts, but there are distinct and deadly similarities between the two creatures. Yes, both creatures are defined by their ability to transform from one state of being into another, from a human into a vicious beast and back again. Also, just as werewolves can be killed with silver bullets, so a projectile coated in white ash will reputedly finish off a skinwalker. The historical backgrounds of each creature are quite different, however. The idea of willing, or in the case of werewolves, unwilling humans becoming dangerous animals, is an ancient one, making it difficult to pin down an exact origin. For some, the Epic of Gilgamesh ushered the werewolf into the Western world. Reportedly written in 2100 BC, this poetic tome is thought to be the world's oldest piece of literature. Ancient Greek historian Herodotus wrote about Scythian tribes who went through the strange tradition of being temporarily turned into wolves. A picture emerges of a wolf transformation happening as a result of bad behavior. Not just bad, but downright evil consumption of human flesh and organs is one example. And at times, individuals were transformed at the hands of an angry god. Regardless of whether someone was transformed because they annoyed a deity, entered into a dark agreement, or were the victim of a werewolf bite, the notion of a wolf person endured across the centuries. For the most part, though, our understanding of a werewolf in the 21st century comes from campfire tales and corny black and white movies. The werewolves we know about follow a strict set of rules. The first and most obvious idea is that of the full moon and its powerful effect on those who have been bitten by a werewolf. An American Werewolf in London, 1981, featured an unfortunate man condemned to a hairy fate. At the full moon, he'd transform into a vicious werewolf. That concept existed long before the film was made, so what is the connection between the night sky and creatures of the night? Again, we can look back to ancient Greece, among other periods, to see the story of wolves that can't help but howl at the sight of the moon when it's full. Of course, there's no scientific proof that our furry friends become bloodthirsty supernatural beings whenever they glimpse a full moon. Nevertheless, the image has long gripped people's imaginations and nightmares. And what about the idea of a werewolf being slain by a silver bullet, as mentioned earlier? It's possible this connection came from 18th century monster hunter Jean Chastel. He apparently used silver against a fearsome beast of Gévaudan in 1767. Whether Chastel used silver bullets or not, however, is disputed. As is the idea of the beast's existence in the first place. In terms of descriptions of silver bullets, one unlikely source is fairy tales. The Two Brothers by the Brothers Grimm reveals that a witch can be shot down with silver buttons. Over a century later, Kurt Siodmak put the idea of a silver bullet in the popular consciousness via his script for classic Universal Pictures horror film The Wolfman, 1941. Clearly, there's centuries of known lore surrounding werewolves. Their skinwalking cousins are no different, and yet for most people, their existence is obscured by mystery. Skinwalkers are a highly taboo subject in Navajo lore, which has made the creatures even more fascinating to outsiders. To vanquish a skinwalker, legend has it that you must attack them in the head and neck with a knife or bullet infused with white ash. You could also use black magic, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. If you don't know their history, then you won't have a shot at defeating them. A skinwalker can be killed, that much is reassuringly true, depending on who you believe. Question is, where did these powerful creatures come from in the first place? They are referred to in Native American mythology, specifically the Navajo, as Yeenald-Lushi, which translates into English as by means of it, it goes on all fours. And as we've said, you won't find an in-depth history of the skinwalkers from the Navajo people themselves. That's because for them these shape-shifting beasts are still very much alive and not consigned to dark legend. They're certainly spoken of in Navajo circles, but not too much outside of them. The old stories exert a powerful hold, even centuries on. As you find out more, you'll understand why. In the American Southwest, home turf to the Navajo, you need to keep your wits about you. That's because skinwalkers allegedly enter our world from another realm, accessing hidden doors in the ancient desert rock that makes up New Mexico. Their ability to enter different worlds on a whim makes them especially dangerous to people, specifically non-Navajo. Not that you'd be able to defend yourself much should a skinwalker choose to make you its meal. These alarming aggressors can shift themselves into different forms in the blink of an eye. Some sources state that they can run and not stop for an ankle-punishing 200 miles. In happier news, they share a quality with vampires in that they actually have to be invited into your home before crossing the threshold and taking a bite out of you. It's worth mentioning that although the legend of skinwalkers started with the Navajo, they are far from the only Native American tribe who believe in and record the creature's activities. The Pueblo, Apache, and Hopi also fear its constantly altering shadow and have their own myths and legends. Plus, despite their connection to werewolves, a skinwalker can take various forms, such as a fox, coyote, or even a smaller airborne predator like an owl. According to the Navajo, the person who becomes a skinwalker isn't an unsuspecting soul, but a skilled and powerful medicine man. They're someone who can use their knowledge of the dark arts to their advantage by performing ceremonies and rituals that invite the skinwalker into their lives, not to mention into their bodies. The rituals are said to include grisly acts like cannibalism. Yuck. Once you've achieved this state of skinwalker, it's permanent. You're not only able to transform into an animal, but jump into another person's body. This happens through the creature's transfixing stare. Eyes are something that's often brought up in relation to skinwalkers. Like any predator in the darkness, those peepers sure do stand out and grab your horrified attention. Making things even more unnerving is the vision of a skinwalker as a misshapen animal. An intimidating yet regular-looking wolf is enough to cope with, let alone something that looks like it may have been crudely molded by a witch. Wolfish appearances, staring eyes, twisted and unusual physiques. How do we know about these details? Have people actually seen these humanoid monsters for themselves? If so, is there a definitive description of the creatures? Nothing is definitive, of course, as everything that's known about skinwalkers were leaked from within the Navajo tribe, who mainly keep skinwalker tales to themselves. However, accounts of outsiders who have allegedly encountered skinwalkers make for chilling reading. Let's start by going back to 1987 and the very real case of a mysteriously murdered Navajo woman. A middle-aged hospital worker in Flagstaff, Arizona, Sarah Saganitso suffered a truly gruesome fate. Her body was discovered behind her place of work in a horrifying state. Worst of all, it was her family who came across her body. They had started to worry after she didn't return home from her shift and went out to look for her. The sight of their deceased family member was upsetting enough, but the manner in which she died was heart-shattering and perplexing. She'd been asphyxiated, beaten, and stabbed, with her left breast brutally bitten. Suspicion fell on former Professor George Abney, who later confessed to killing Saganitso after dreaming about the crime. But when his trial came around, his lawyers made a shocking argument in his defense. His lawyers argued that a skinwalker was responsible for Saganitso's death. This is an absolutely extraordinary statement to make under any circumstances, but as it turned out, it wasn't as far-fetched as it seemed. You see, Saganitso's body was found in a way that suggested a ritualistic practice was a factor in her death. Objects at the murder scene indicated the presence of this dark Navajo legend. Saganitso had been left with a broken stick positioned on her neck. A rogue clump of grass was also discovered by her vehicle, and not just any clump of grass, but one that reportedly came from a graveyard. Abney's team wanted to highlight the possible use of black magic. Although Abney initially confessed to the murder, the mystique surrounding the case left a seed of doubt in the jury's mind. Abney claimed his confession was coerced. To make matters even more complicated, George Abney was a practicing Christian who thought he was being spoken to by God. Between this and his defense team bringing in the idea of a skinwalker, the case was so wrapped up speculation that fact and fiction became harder and harder to differentiate. By all accounts, Abney was delusional, and the evidence seemed to tie him to the crime. That said, there was a major twist in the tale. Somehow, Abney walked free just 1 year after he was convicted of the murder, leaving the crime unsolved. He was thought to be unstable, but ultimately not the person who committed the crime. This view was shared by Sarah Saganitso's family. The open-ended conclusion added further fuel to the fire of supernatural controversy. When all's said and done, most people were convinced that a skinwalker wasn't to blame. So who is? It's a question we may never have the answer to. But just because skinwalkers weren't blamed for that particular murder doesn't mean they don't exist. Another location has become synonymous with these terrifying creatures. In fact, the name of the place was changed to Skinwalker Ranch. This 500-odd-acre area in Utah near Fort Duchesne used to be owned by Terry and Gwen Sherman. Their story made headlines back in 1996. Terry Sherman reportedly came face to face with a truly unnerving wolf whilst out walking his dogs at night. Wolves are of course unnerving at the best of times. However, this particular wolf didn't follow the usual laws of nature. The wolf was reportedly 3 times its regular size. Sherman revealed how the animal's eyes glowed red. It also didn't help his composure when he tried shooting it, not just once but 3 times. Yes, it looked like he'd run into a skinwalker. Furthermore, the mythical beast had been busy around the family's property, allegedly stealing or mutilating livestock. UFO activity was also mentioned on the ranch, contributing to the eerie air surrounding the location. Yes, when the family wasn't busy fearing skinwalkers, they were dealing with aliens. Terry Sherman spoke to the Deseret News in 1996, where he described his unsettling home environment. "You talk to a lot of people around here that at one time or another have seen something they can't explain," he stated. He wasn't the first and wouldn't be the last to experience something unnatural in the dense woods of Skinwalker Ranch. Referring to the mutilation of cattle, he said that fellow ranchers told me that when they had a mutilation, they called the authorities and the authorities couldn't do anything, so it was just a waste of time and effort. Understandably, the Shermans moved on, leaving the next set of owners to cope with the unearthly trouble. Their experiences put skinwalkers firmly on the media map. The legacy would continue as the ranch became focused on its monstrous visitors. Robert Bigelow, whose passions included real estate and unexplained phenomena, bought the property, and it wasn't long before the National Institute for Discovery Science set up shop on the ranch. Any doubts they may have had about skinwalkers were quickly dispelled. Terry Sherman reportedly saw a skinwalker wolf, yet even more chilling sights appeared for his successors. Colm Kelleher, a biochemist at the site, spotted something strange up a tree one night in 1997. It wasn't a critter or feathered friend of some kind. It was human-shaped and almost appeared to be reclining among the boughs. Its bright yellow eyes confirmed that Kelleher wasn't dealing with a mischievous human, however. Like Sherman, Kelleher decided to grab his gun and fire off some lead. Whatever it was, the creature departed. Kelleher believed it to be a clawed bird with worryingly human qualities. All that's interesting notes the location of the ranch, which is several hundred miles off from Navajo territory. Seeing potential skinwalkers far from their supposed stomping ground is certainly food for thought. Their alleged existence has inspired creative people for years, especially in Hollywood. In this age of copious low-budget horror movies, the legend of the skinwalker has been explored numerous times. The Navajo and others may not like talking about them, but fascinated filmmakers have no qualms. One high-profile example is the film The Darkness, 2016, which starred Kevin Bacon as someone who is pursued by an evil force. The Skinwalker is one of many creatures from Native American mythology that have been put on screen. Like our main topic of conversation, the Wendigo is a shapeshifter capable of taking control of people's bodies. There are also connections to acts of cannibalism, a recurring theme with the Skinwalker story. Naturally, the image of the Wendigo has appeared repeatedly in popular culture. As well as finding its way into the pages of Marvel Comics and the world of the Incredible Hulk, Wendigos have featured in various TV series, such as The X-Files. Most recently, the 2021 movie Antlers focused on a Wendigo. Producing the movie was one Guillermo del Toro, Pan's Labyrinth, Hellboy, himself no stranger to legendary beasts and disturbing imagery. Another related creature who you're probably familiar with is the Sasquatch, or, to give it a more recognizable name, Bigfoot. This one tends to stick to the same shape. Compared to an ape, it reportedly dwells in the forests of North America. Its human-like qualities can be contrasted with the mix of species associated with the Skinwalker. Unlike the Skinwalker, Bigfoot has turned into a global brand of sorts. You're unlikely to find a sports mascot or amusement park ride named after the Skinwalker. Bigfoot, on the other hand, is associated with fun and laughter all year round. 1987 saw the release of family comedy Harry and the Hendersons, which put a comical spin on the story. Good to know not all ancient legends are scary. Still, the Skinwalker occupies such a prominent place in people's imaginations precisely because it's so terrifying. Skinwalkers enter unexpectedly from another world, disguising themselves as beasts or birds before descending on innocent people and committing unspeakable acts. Its power may also drive our friends and neighbors to perform evil deeds. You'll certainly think twice before taking the dogs out at night from now on. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe.